Hey guys, we're going to be running through laying out the UVs for a head. At this point, we should have a symmetrical version of our head that's been mirrored from left to right and then sewn back together. The other thing that we need to make sure before we start the process is that we have Maya's new unfolding algorithm loaded up, or unfolding plugin. So to double check that, if you have your UV toolkit open, if you shift click the unfold option, you should be able to see at the top that it says unfold 3D. If that isn't there, where you need to go to load that in is under Windows, Settings and Preferences, and then the Plugin Manager. When the Plugin Manager comes up, you need to scroll down to where it says unfold3d.mll. And these two checkboxes, if it's not loaded, those won't be checked. So go ahead and check both of them and click refresh. And when you do that, the next time that you shift click unfold, you should be able to see this unfold 3D option pop up. Okay, so to get started, you can see that my head has no UVs on it because I've selected it, and in the UV panel there's nothing showing up. So I'm going to create some UVs with a planar projection. So if I shift click planar, it brings up the planar options. And then I want to project from the Z axis, and I also want to keep the image width and height ratio when I do it. If I don't have that active and I click apply, you can see that it stretches the head out. So if I select that option and then hit apply again, it'll project it and it'll keep the width and height ratio closer to what the head actually is. Okay, so at this point, we have our jumping off point, which is UVs for the entire head. It's all one piece, but they're all overlapping, so they're not really usable right now for bringing into Photoshop and painting textures. So we need to cut apart this single UV into smaller pieces, and then maybe sew some of it back together so that it's easier to work with. The tool that makes that really easy is called the 3D Cut and Sew tool. So if you click your poly modeling shelf and then go all the way to the right, you can see that 3D Cut and Sew tool is down there. It looks like a razor and a sewing thing. And so if you click that, now when you hover over the model, it should be kind of activating the edges. And if you double click an edge, it'll turn white. And that indicates that I've cut the UV at that point. The other nice thing to turn on when you're working in this mode is here in the UV editor, this option over here will show you with color where your UVs are divided. So if I connect this edge all the way around by double clicking it, you can see that the neck is now turned to green. That indicates that it's now its own UV shell. So if I click the UV shell button in the UV toolkit and then I select the neck and I move it, it moves separately from the head. So now this is made up of two separate UVs. So I'm going to keep on creating pieces from the main head. The next one will run around the top of the forehead. So if I double click that, find an edge that goes around that way, find an edge that runs kind of along the hairline to the ear, double click around the front of the ear, and then just kind of keep going until you've connected back with the neck. And this edge is a little tricky to get to because it is underneath of the ear. Okay, got that. And then on the other side, I've actually done something that, so if I had symmetry turned on, it would have done this automatically. So I'll actually undo all of those cuts that I just did and then turn symmetry on for this part so that I can work a little bit faster, so I don't have to do the same thing on both sides. So if I click that, it's done that edge too. All right, so I'll keep going, click that edge. And your model might be slightly different than mine. So the edge that goes around and then around the ear might be a little bit different. But basically what you're trying to do is just separate the face from the back of the head and the ear. The next one that you want to try and separate is just the ear itself. So if you double click an edge that connects back that way, actually I'll go even in one more. So if I double click that, it connects both of those. So now the ear is its own separate model. And two other areas to pay attention to are anytime you have a surface that's kind of extruded in, so like the ear or the nostril, it's usually a good idea to go ahead and disconnect those as well so that the bigger object, the outside object, unfolds a little bit more easily. So I'll just find an edge ring that is close to the surface but maybe a little bit in. So that one seems good. So I've double clicked that, and then in the nostril I'll do the same thing. I'll find kind of the first inside one and cut that out. And then the final cut that I need to make is on the neck here, because this is still all connected. So if I double click that, it'll make it so that it unfolds much more cleanly. All right, so at this point, if I click my UV shell button and then I select, you can see that I have a face. I'll turn off my symmetry now. I have a left ear and I have a right ear. I have the top of the head, and then I have all the little interior bits. So the inside of the left ear, the inside of the left nostril, right side, and right ear as well. Okay, so with all of those kind of available, if I do a drag select over all of them, and then I open up my unfold tool, it should already be set to unfold 3D because I just loaded it. But basically if I click that and then hit apply, you might see this message, and if you get this, go ahead and select always fix non-manifold geometry. Okay, so you can see that it unfolded everything very nicely and evenly. The face kind of resembles a face, but it's kind of peeled apart. And then the top of the head kind of looks like a little bit of a fish to me. But we'll have just a few more steps and then we should be done. The top of the head isn't quite as important for detail because it'll probably be covered by hair. It's also not the focal point of a lot of renders. So shrinking that down so it's less important is usually a good strategy. So I'll shrink it down, not totally tiny, but maybe about that big. And then the face and the neck, I'm actually going to reattach, because right now we have this cut all along the jaw, which will make it a little bit harder to paint and have a texture not show kind of the difference between those two areas. So to get those back together, I'll use just a sew operation. So under cut and sew, if you drop that down, you can see this sew option. And if I click the edge mode up at the top in the UV toolkit, I can select all the edges that run along the bottom of my face UV. So you can see the corresponding edges on the neck are also highlighted. So when that is all lined up, if you hit sew, it'll stitch those back together. And then, because this is now kind of stretched out, it didn't, like if you turn on the checkers, you can see that this is stretched and not looking very good. If I turn that off and then I select my head and I hit unfold one more time, now the neck is connected, and if I turn the checkers on, you can see that they're looking much more even and clean. So now the head should be able to fit nicely kind of at the bottom and take up, you can see here's 0 and that's 1, so that's where my UV ends. Try and position that within that area. Okay, and then here at the top you can also kind of turn your UVs and arrange them so that they all fit in the best way possible. So here, this ear, kind of put it close to that side of the head just so I know which ear it is, and then I'll put this ear close to this side of the head. And then all these little pieces I can just arrange up at the top, make sure that the like are together. So these are the two nostrils, put them together, and these are the two ears. And actually I'll put this ear next to this ear, and this ear next to this ear. And then I'll just remember that these are my nostrils. Okay, so at this point, this is a fairly usable set of UVs here. The last thing that I'll mention is just getting the UVs out of Maya so they can be usable in Photoshop. To do that, you can highlight everything, and then you can either go to Image and then UV Snapshot, or you can just use the little camera button up here at the top. That does the same thing. So if I highlight them, I click the little camera, it brings up this dialog box where the top is where the file will be exported to. So I'll just, actually, no, I'll make sure to, so I have this project set to my Kirby Portrait Project Maya project folder. So when I browse, it automatically opens up my images folder, and that's a good place to send things. So I'll go ahead and name this head UV and click save. And then the file type, I will make it a ping because it needs transparency. And then the size, I'll make it 2048, maybe a little bit higher resolution image, so it'll look a little bit better. So then when I hit apply, it just sent it there, or apply and close, and it will ask me, because I already just sent it there, you can overwrite it. Okay. So now if I go into my project folder, which is located inside of here, I go to Kirby Project, Portrait, Images. You can see here I've got my head UV. So if I open it with Photoshop, this can be my starting point for creating my texture. So it opens up. The first thing that I usually do to get my texture set up is just create a white background. So if I make a new layer, put it on the bottom, and fill that layer with white. And then I want to make my UVs a little bit easier to see. So if I double click the layer with my UVs on it and I select color overlay, I like to use a blue, some kind of brighter blue, makes it easier to see. And then just make sure that the blend mode is normal. And when you hit OK, you've got these nice, easy to see UVs. So when you start to paint stuff or do anything, you know where on your model this is going to show up. Woo. All right.